Cool. All right, guys. Welcome to Plates, Dates, and Mates episode I Have Forgotten. But we are welcoming back Mr. Blake today. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm very well, mate. I'm very well. You all right?
Yeah, man. All good, all good, all good. The biggest problem you see with any sort of client, and how do you overcome it?
Because I think there's a really weird attitude sometimes, and it's often coaches that talk about it, but it's that thing of like we have the same 24 hours of the day. Um, Everyone has the same opportunity, which I guess in a logical sense is true, but in a realistic sense, I just don't think is true. Um, I'm working with a few guys online at the moment that are competing almost at the Olympic level, or at the very least at the international level. They represent their country, but they need to
Oh,
make money. They need to like do things like some of them work night jobs because they need to make money because the
yeah,
sports they're in isn't very well funded. So then things take a hit, and you know life is multifactorial. And I think in terms of getting the outcome, time is usually the biggest one. I don't think buy-in's a very difficult thing for me because I think I take an approach where I'm a very like human coach. Um, and I think I lead from the front in not being perfect, which is almost the inverse of what you'd expect a coach to say. Like I definitely don't eat brilliant all the time. My sleep's terrible. I don't love the gym a lot of the time. Like I actually get quite bored quite quickly.
mm,
I've just actually started training at a new gym yesterday, even though I have a perfectly great facility at home, because I'm just getting a little bit unenthusiastic about being in there on my own all the time. So it's like trying to find ways to almost like do the minimum the best you can. And then once you've got that nailed, it's applying more. And that's the kind of, I guess, the concept I use a lot of my guys. It's like, what's the least we can do to get you to where you want to get to? What's the minimum you can sacrifice? And then we'll build from there. And I think sometimes the expectations too high on people. I think there's a lot of pressure to be perfect and to dial everything in. And unfortunately, a lot of coaches are very good at that. Like we represent what we embody our own vision in a sense. So like we should eat well, we should look good, we should be strong. And as admirable as that is for a lot of people, it's also, I guess, creates distance with some clients as well. Um, because they're like, well, I don't have the time or the effort or the energy to get to that point, and it's really difficult to try and cultivate that in people if they don't have it then and there. Um, you know how easy it is to have a client that like is like addicted to the gym. They'll do anything. They'll you could give them a meal plan, they'll follow it to the T. Having someone that has never followed a nutrition plan, if you give them those things, I don't personally do that, but like if you do that and they don't understand it or they don't know what they're doing, it can be really hard to create buy-in into that. And you're asking them to create big changes almost with the single answer of like because it works. And there's like a deficit in like what they know they need to do and knowing why they need to do it. And
yeah,
it's
cool,
yeah,
yeah,
that's something. So yeah, but no, I think it's interesting. I think like it's a really hard thing, isn't it, to like shoehorn into a single outcome. Like not that that's what you're doing at all, but like what is the cause of like what is the most difficult thing? Because brilliantly, everyone is completely different. Don't be too hard on people, especially general pop. Like,
for sure, for sure.
if they're choosing to come and see us and come and like learn from us, and if we just like make them feel bad for not being able to
And
do things, it's like
being
you're making it, yeah, you're increasing the beast in that sense.
Yeah,
Um,
you're almost putting more barriers for entry for them actually achieving the goal that they want because you're at the end of the day you're making them subconsciously resent themselves, and which is the actual opposite of what a coach should be doing. What caught my ear quite a lot was this whole perfection idea. I think a lot of coaches do put that across, especially the more bodybuilderish ones, perhaps.
yeah,
To be fair, if you're coaching a bodybuilder and they want results, sure, they have to be damn well perfect, which is fair. But in terms of the average guy that maybe wants to build a bit of muscle, or I don't know, the mum who wants to lose some weight and she's got three kids at home, striving for perfection in terms of nutrition and exercise, it's just not sustainable because at the end of the day, people are busy, and the only people that prioritize exercise over everything else are personal trainers. So, yeah, that's really important. I think what people should take from that is perfection is not what you should aim for. It's only going to lead you into a hole of probably despair,
And
perhaps.
I think you've touched on something really important there, in that like, and bodybuilding is a great example because things are so kind of analytical and methodical. And it's a brilliant kind of environment and culture to be a part of when you are fully immersed in that. But I think it wasn't until I had the kind of the chance to coach high level athletes compared to coaching Gen Pop, people that don't want to give me more than 2 hours a week, that I realized how much like the individual makes the difference. Like some of my guys online, they will do everything I ask them, no matter what I tell them to do, they'll do it. If I tell them to do 92.5%, they'll do it. Like you don't have to, there's no, I truly believe the easiest people to coach are the elite, or the people that buy into your things. And that's where having models as a coach, like if you have a complete system of doing something, and generally it often aligns with the way they do things themselves, because that's what they believe is best. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it themselves. Then what happens is if you have anyone that falls outside of your model, it doesn't work. So you need athletes that are going to be very good or very committed or diligent to the process. That will work brilliantly for them. But it's really hard because then you have to be kind of malleable. I think we talked about this last time, like the adaptability of a coach and like trying to be a bit more of like an empath when it comes to coaching individuals. Like, and I think I've realized that coaching Gen Pop is actually incredibly difficult because of the buy-in process and because of like you said, like I like the way you put like barriers to entry in there, because for a lot of people that is what it is. It's just a barrier. Now that barriers are crossable, but there's still a barrier there, and it's like learning. It's like identifying those, and also helping them identify them. Like having transparency and building an outcome together. It doesn't have to be like. I don't like this idea of like I'm the coach. This is what I say. You do it.
Yeah.
I call my like the way I coach. I refer to it as like athlete-led coaching or like integrated, where it's like a partnership. Like we problem solve together. There's not just one person in this that's leading it. It's because I'm learning from them probably more than they're learning from me.
There's a whole mental aspect to it as well. If they're coming to a coach, it's probably out of a place of like they actually need help, because if they're purchasing this, it's become a necessity for them to change. And there's wanting to change, and then there's changing, and it's that gap in between. It's actually really hard to develop those new habits. They don't give themselves permission to do better, and then they fall into those negative habits which got them bad in the first place. I think it's really hard to overcome that mental space of this is what we have to do, but you're all the way over here, and it's like trial and error until you get there. But that's okay. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be bang on it. I've even had clients where they haven't even followed the like correct nutrition for X number of months, like, but they still made progress in the gym. They still got stronger. They still built muscle. But when it comes to losing the body fat, it was a big hurdle for them to change their food choices, consume less calorie dense food so they stick to the plan, etc. And that's okay. They don't have to be so bang on it from day one, because no one is. Even a coach isn't so bang on it all the time. And if they are, they're lying to you.
I think it's a finite amount of people that truly are that committed to the process. And I think you raise a really good point in that, saying it's like the difference between wanting to change and actually changing. And I think it's like teaching people to like take ownership without creating guilt, like feeling bad for the process. Like you absolutely shouldn't feel guilty for like the decisions you make, but you have to be aware of them. And this is where I think, because I think I really struggle with the concept of like tough love. I think tough love is such a difficult thing, because like, who am I to have a go at a human for like not following their protein goal for a week? And like how, for me, it's such an absurd concept that like I have to, and don't get me wrong, I'd say a lot of my people in person come to me purely for the accountability. They enjoy the sessions, we've connected, but I keep them accountable and they do the work. But I still think in that sense, this is where, and probably the most important thing I'll say is like, I think the problem with a lot of the coaching sides is there's actually a lack of teaching and like informing or educating. Like you have to like, they have to know why they're doing things in order to like see the value in them. Like if you're just giving someone something that says like, because nutrition is such a great example, eat this much for this meal, chuck a bowl of cereal in there to hit the calories for this week, even though you might not like cereal that much and stuff like that. It's like there's no information there. There's no, you're trying to create outcomes for that person. I know this works, so therefore you should do it. I think I touched on this a minute ago. It's like I think there's no intention to elevate that person's awareness. And I guess there's like a kind of like an idea is that for my in-person guys, for the online stuff's a bit different because we're like monitoring and improving performance constantly. But I'd almost like the guys that come to me that maybe aren't confident in their bodies, that want to lose weight, that want to perform better. A lot of my guys want to move better. The goal should almost be to like make myself redundant. So like I teach them and educate them well enough that they don't need me in a year or two or three, that they are confident enough to go into a gym. They're confident enough to know how to make good, healthy choices in life, sleep, habits, anything like that, that I've like passed them on. A bit like a school system without trying to be too mocking to their intellect. But it's like, and that doesn't mean that they have to leave. Like I've coached some people for like 3 or 4 years now, even though they're more than capable of doing their own thing. But it's the intention to make them better for themselves, not just for your, Instagram before and after, and for their ego. It's like it's so much more than that. I think I remember talking a lot about before with you, like the brain being the most important thing. And that's where things like bodybuilding and the boom of like bodybuilding physique style stuff is like brought everything down to like a muscular level and how to train the muscles. But I think there's like a lack of synchronity with training movements and developing skills and things like that. But it has to come down to everything. Like I think we have to just educate first. And if people can buy into the education process, and because for me, I pride myself on doing the least for the most. So I probably train the least in the gym I can to still have a benefit, and it works. Like I get stronger, I can do better skills, I'm fitter. But I do the little I can rather than the most I can for that outcome, and then I can apply more to that foundation. It's only by understanding how to do that I can do it, and that's not me saying that teaching people to do the least thing, but it's saying that when we have knowledge available, we have it brings us some comfort and some awareness. And it's so much easier to coach someone that understands why they're doing something than when they don't, because the buy-in just diminishes if they don't understand, especially if it's something that's painful or unenjoyable or things like that. If something's not enjoyable to someone, but they understand why they're doing it, you have more chance of buy-in. Whereas if they don't understand any value in it whatsoever, and you're just telling them, it's like you create like a resistance. I think if people buy into you and they feel like you truly give a shit about them, I believe they start to give more of a shit about themselves. Like there's so much more. Like I think I went through such a fascinating phase of thinking with nutrition, especially, that it was like how are people just not doing it? How are people just like not being slim and not being
right? Yeah,
it's such like a psychophysical thing, and it's such like an emotional thing that we're completely naive to assume that like for most people it's that simple. And I truly believe that like until you've been through something like an eating disorder, and that's not saying that in every case, but it's a disservice to assume that because you've never struggled to eat well and to go to the gym 5 times a week, that's the same for everyone. It just absolutely isn't the same. It's such a zeitgeist, it's such a huge thing for some people to take those small steps and break those patterns, and it's hard. It's really hard.
I think to summarise everything we just said is it's okay not to be fantastic, and it's actually probably a good thing because you're only a human being, and over the long term you're going to create better, smaller habits, and they're going to accumulate over time. And you're just going to change as you go along. And that's absolutely fine. That's what it should be. Continue to improve where you can. And if you need help, seek out a possible coach that you think does have an interest for your physical well-being as well as your mental. And I think you'll be okay.
Relearn about certain things. Like I've been doing a lot of stuff around meditation again. And like I listened to a really cool podcast, and one of the things they talked about was like this idea that the whole premise of meditation is to be present, is to create internal awareness in that moment. And they talked about, if you're meditating for this outcome of like, after this, I want to be more in control. I want to improve my mental health. I want to feel happier. I want to be more relaxed. I want to sleep better. You've already lost the presence because you're now applying something for an outcome. By creating a goal-driven form of meditation, which I absolutely do, I definitely say I meditate every night because I want to sleep better, but that's okay. But in its essence, in its raw nature, you have already lost that present value in it. But I think sometimes the same thing can happen with, especially general pop, the same thing can happen with training, in that thing of, by being very fixated on the outcome of something, you kind of get lost in that murky bit in the middle, which is like just doing that thing. So something I would say to people is like, just turn up. Like, just turn up. We'll just do what we do. We'll train. Keep it daily. Keep an eye on things. Like in that moment, think, am I doing the right thing? You know, is eating these 3 cheeseburgers the right thing? If in the moment it's yes, eat them. If in the moment it's a no, don't. Hopefully it should be mainly no's. But there's time for a yes. Sure. I think sometimes like just take people away from like that big, like, this is where I get to. It's like that feels so far away.
I think that's great.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's the attitude I tend to take with things now. Is like, there's nothing wrong with having things to push towards. Like, I think is really healthy. But I think things like the David Goggins kind of like style of things, and that kind of like leave no stone unturned, go 100 miles an hour. I just don't think most people are prepared for that as quickly as they think they are. And they need to take those little small steps daily and focus on those daily small steps to get that thing. You know, it's quite cliche in a sense, but it is very true.
I think why that's not very popular, that sort of way of thinking, as opposed to the David Goggins vibe, is because it doesn't sound very cool. It doesn't sound very sexy. And if someone made, say, a TikTok on what you just said, it might not do as well as it probably wouldn't, because it's not as emotional, impactful, like, yeah, fuck yeah. But again, yeah, like,
it's an example of, as coaches, we increase the deficit. We make it harder for our clients to achieve things because we want to perceive that we are this thing, and they want to be that thing. But to get there so big, we need to meet people where they are, not expect them to meet us where we are. And that's the problem, is that only David Goggins wrote the book by David Goggins. There's only one David Goggins, if we want to use that example. And I'll be honest, I really don't like, it's not I don't like, I think he's incredible. I've read the book, I think it's amazing, but that isn't a representation of most people. And most people are going to read it and go, fuck yeah, like, this is amazing. I'm going to do all this shit. And it's like, it just isn't a representation of a real person. Like, he is not a real person. And it's really admirable and impressive for people to aim towards those things. But it's almost like it's become a fantastical outcome. It's not that real. Not yet anyway. It takes a long time to be able to be that kind of person. And I do believe that a lot of the people that read those things and can do them have already been doing them. Like, the people that can say, I'm going to do what he does and wake up, I don't know, say he wakes up at 4 a.m. They're the ones that are already probably waking up at like 6 a.m. and had everything dialed. And I mean, like, I definitely am, like, I would say, like, a negative, lazy person a lot of the time. But I've had periods in my life where I've been completely dialed in. But the cost of doing that was massive. And I just don't think most people are prepared to pay the cost of that yet. So, like, they're aiming sometimes for the wrong things. But like you've just said, there's nothing sexy in saying it's okay if you don't do well all the time. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, you don't have to be Matt Fraser to be a CrossFitter. You don't have to be Usain Bolt to go to a track. It's like, just go and sprint and be shit. But at least you did it. Like, just have fun. Like, I don't know. I do think we create this like polarizing thing of like always attaining for the best. It's like there's no room for underneath that. And social media, as you say, is like shining a light on the best in the world. So, well, it's like I'm doing a powerlifting comp in January, and I'm only doing it to help. Like, my sister wants to do so I said I'd do one with her. It'd be cool. I'm fairly strong, so I'll do okay. But it's like, I could look at that and go, what's the point of me going when there's a 16-year-old that's already got 100 kilos of, like, 80 kilos on my total? It's like, well, yeah, but it's you. Like, it's the best you've ever done. Like, yeah, for sure. Exactly. I do think, and I know a few really good coaches, like Ben Simons, who is an absolute freak, like one of the bounciest people ever, bobsleigh Olympian, but he talked about this as well, and that thing of like, just like, don't worry about what other people are doing. But social media makes that impossible.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, perfect.
Even as a coach, surely you see other coaches and you think, fuck, like, it's really hard to like, oh, they're doing so well, or I wish I looked like them. You
Guilty
fall
of
into
that,
that trap.
100%.
Oh, me too.
100%. But what that does is, like you said, it takes you away from that process of where you are and where you want to be. And it makes almost this unattainable. And you almost develop this sort of self-sabotaging, demonizing mindset against yourself of like subconsciously, oh, you're not good enough, you're not like this, you can't do this. And it's like, bro, chill out.
Yeah.
Just do what you can today and be done with it. And if you don't do it today, it's all right. Maybe you had something on because you're a normal person, and that's absolutely fine. Like, a weird example of this is at the start of summer, it was like the first time I really committed to, say, a cut, like trying to get like lean. So I did it. I stuck to the diet plan. And along the way, I experienced all of the negatives that you would, like, it was hard, I was hungry, I was moody, fatigue, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if it was the exact amount, I don't know, but I got to around 10%. That's where I wanted to get to. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy I did it. My six pack's out. I look veiny. After I'd done it, I realised I developed this sort of sense of body dysmorphia. And then as soon as I ate like a slice of pizza or I had like a fucking one biscuit, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh no, I've got fatter. All of the water's come back and it's not good. But the whole time it was all in my head because I had developed this unrealistic expectation of what perfection was and what it and how I needed to be that level of body fat. But I was actually happier when I wasn't tracking cows and I was sort of just being intuitive with it. And that wasn't perfect. But I'm doing that now. And sure, I might be about 12, 13% now, but I'm fuller, I'm happier, my belly's full, I'm eating what I want, and I'm just sort of chilling and coasting. But I prefer it now than before. So sometimes, even if you are at perfection in whatever endeavor you are choosing, it might not even be worth it. It might not even be worth the struggle and the pain that it is.
I agree. But it's like, I think what's brilliant about that is you've taken the time to find out. And like, I think as a coach, you have to explore that thing and you have to find out for yourself. And like, when I had a really bad bout of depression, I don't know how long ago now, like 2 years ago. I'm sorry, my dog keeps bloody barking. Basil, stop. I put loads of weight on. I got up to like nearly 90 kilos. Now I'm 5'7". You know, I don't need to be that heavy. And going through that process and like watching my body and myself like perceptually deteriorate and get to a place I was very unhappy with and having to pull myself out of that hole was probably like the most growing experience ever because like I felt so much more like, I guess, compassion for the people that fall into those things because I realized how hard it was to do it. Now, what you're saying is the inverse. You dialed in, you got to that 10%, but that's the same process in my opinion. That's equally, if not as more, to get yourself out of because of the psychological trauma you could put yourself through. I got down once when I was doing absurd amounts of CrossFit and I didn't eat dairy for like 10 months and didn't drink for 10 months. I actually got down to 8% and I felt awful and like just felt disgusting. And again, I found I was like eating just like kind of like forming a little bit of an eating disorder-y kind of thing. And just it wasn't until I kind of started coming out of that I realized how damaged I felt. But like those are experiences that I think are so valuable in terms of being able to understand other people. It's great that you put yourself through that and you're also honest in that experience because it's so easy to like form a denial around it and be like, especially when you are coaching people, I do think it pays to look good. Let's be honest, like look at the biggest names. Like, mate, you could do a bodybuilding comp, have no coaching experience, and now you're selling plans online, and it's like it works. And
Yeah,
it's a shame because I think, you know, I very much am an advocate of eating in your own restaurant in that sense of like practice what you preach. Like if you are those things, be those things. But then I still think there's such a poor understanding of like what is good information and what's not. And like some of the best coaches I know, you know, there's a coach called Dan Hipkiss, and he coached like the world's strongest men, the Scottish brothers, the Saltmans, and he isn't a strong man. He isn't, you know, he lost a lot of weight. He was very overweight and went through a brilliant process, but he is the embodiment of compassion and awareness and education. Yeah. He connected with those people, he informed them and he educated them. And it's like, you should use those experiences to connect with people, inform them and educate them. And it's like, you know, you've given yourself another tool in your toolkit now. And it's curious, like, as much as we're talking about coaching clients, it's about you and me as well, like, and our own lives. And like, you've done something very impressive, and it is very impressive, even if there was a potential cost in the process. I think physical performance is so like adaptable. I've never really found that. I always say to people, like, I've never really found that thing I love enough to like give myself to it fully. Like, I've done CrossFit, I got sick of it. I've done like more powerlifting style training, I got sick of it. I don't love running enough to want to do those things, but I don't know. Like, I've actually next year got quite a few different competitions. So I'm doing a powerlifting comp in January, and then I think I'm hopefully doing a weightlifting competition. So snatch and clean and jerk in like May, June, if there's one available.
Like the Olympic lifting sort of comp.
Olympic lifting, yeah. So,
sweet, man.
Which is probably like my best thing of the lot of them relative to my weight. And then, yeah, I think I'm also going to do a marathon and a triathlon at the end of the year. And I've also promised my friend I'll do a CrossFit comp in summer. So that's like 5 or 6 different events.
And they're all completely different as well.
Exactly. And I guess, because I would often call myself like a generalist. I'd say I'm just above average at most things. I'm not exceptional at any one thing, but I enjoy that. And I like the variability. I like the fact that I can go and run, and then I can do muscle ups easily, and then I can deadlift nearly 3 times my body weight. And I just think it's like that's fun for me. But like, I don't know, I'm also kind of hoping that I find something that I'm willing to commit to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'll fall in love with one of them more and get carried away with it, but I don't know. See what happens. But strongman would be a cool one as well. There's a really cool event in Scotland. I think they do it in Wales as well, which is like a mountain triathlon. And I've got a friend that's like wants to do it with me, but he's not fitter than I am. But it's a triathlon. So it's swim, bike, hike Ben Nevis in the middle, bike, run. So that'd be pretty groovy. That
mental.
I'm not there yet. But I think they put that on like September time. So I thought that could be a quite nice way to like close out the summer.
Yeah, mate, that sounds savage. But that sounds like an experience that sounds fun. That sounds really fun.
That's it. Like, it sounds fun and it sounds like an experience. Like, that's good enough reason.
Yeah, for sure. And at the start of the year, in February, I did a half marathon, and it was the first time I did something like that, like ever. I didn't even run. And the training I did for it, I did 1 5K 3 days before, and that was it. That's all I did. Because I was sort of, sorry?
As foolish as that is, it's quite impressive at the same time.
Yeah, thanks. But, well, my ankles did not thank me for that after, mate. I literally couldn't walk for like 4 days. Like, I was in bits. I was in tatters. Like, my ankles, my knees, my shins. Sure, the pain was horrible, but I got to the finish line and I was pretty fucking happy.
Yeah.
The time wasn't great, but I didn't stop and I kept going, so it was good.
Again, it's presence over proceedings. So like, it's not about that thing. It's not about the outcome of that thing. It's about doing that thing, isn't it? So it's just get lost in the moment, and then eventually you'll find the line. You know.
Yeah.
At one point in the present, the line will be there. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Did you ever do a run before, like something like that?
I've run a half marathon, but not officially, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
When I did CrossFit, because I did CrossFit like kind of like full time for maybe like a year and a half, nearly 2 years, and I was like super light, super skinny, like not skinny but like lean. And obviously coming out the back of playing football quite competitively, I always had like a decent engine. And then, yeah, I remember one day I was following like a program in, I think it was like JST, and there was like, at the end of the week on the Saturday, it was like an optional half marathon, like 13.1 miles. So I just got my headphones on and just ran it, and yeah, felt fine, to be honest with it. But at the time, I was very fit. If I did that now, I'd fall to bits. But so I'm also something like 13 kilos heavier than I was then, and probably, yeah, I probably run like once a week compared to doing some form of aerobic exercise every day back then.
For me, as someone that likes to learn about muscle growth and stuff, is we've got all these parameters around how to build muscle and stuff. But like, for example, Joe, he's put on a lot of muscle just from doing the big three. Of course, he does accessories as well, but it's a completely different style of training.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. Like, he shot up in size from, I don't know, like 3-4 years ago, but he's not even training to be wham. He's training to
this
fucking weights.
Yeah.
And it's almost providing the same effect as someone that would follow a bodybuilding program. Sure, he might not be so concerned about the diameter of his side delt, but like,
this is where we need to, as coaches, like let go of what we think we know and accept what is real. And there's just so much. I talked about this loads of times. I mean, I wrote a paper on this when I was when I was doing my degree, and it's like understanding how muscle growth occurs, and it's mechanical tension. So the intensity of the lift, in my opinion, still is the primary cause of muscle growth. So the concept of like metabolic stress and kind of muscle damage are secondary, if important at all, in the grand schemes of muscle development. And the beautiful thing about attaining muscle with strength is that it occurs at a much greater rate when the intensity is high. So if we were to do, say, let's cut out 1 and 2 because that's like super nervous system heavy. Let's say that anything between 3 and 6 reps is what like we'd consider like a strength thing. And then traditionally 6 to 10 or 6 to 12 or 6 to 15, that's where you gain your muscle. Now, in a sense, that's the correct, but there's a chance that we might sacrifice some of the strength gains available by doing high rep ranges. Like the muscle growth is the same, but we might lose out on some of the neuromuscular capacity that we could gain. And for example, I mean, I'm not huge, but I have gained quite a considerable amount of muscle. You know, I've gained 13 kilos since like 2 years ago, and I'm pretty sure that's not all fat. But it's very rare that outside of some accessory work, I go anything above 6 reps. Haven't done for a long time. Joe's the same as that. He will do some high volume stuff. I mean, I know he does some high volume stuff, but the volume is there with the intensity. So yeah, he might be doing 3, 4, 5, but he's doing enough sets at that intensity with proficient rest to achieve a serious amount of muscle development. And there's just some dogma still in that idea of like 8 to 10 reps every set to failure. It's like it's just absurd, because it's like just let go. Like, and I see it all the time, and it's everywhere. It's from coaches I know that are 15 from 50, like and that's okay. Like it works, but it's not the only way, and it potentially isn't the best way if we want to argue the hierarchy of muscular development. And I think it's just it shouldn't be such a shocking thing anymore. And there's no reason why we have to stay bound to a single outcome. I kind of undulate my intensities throughout the week, and I know that this is quite popular in some coaching circles, and all that means is that I regulate my intensity differently throughout sessions. So if I do 3 total body sessions a week, my first one might be super heavy and super low volume, so like sets of 1 to 4, but there might be a few more sets. Then I might do like a low session, which is like 1 or 2 sets, but maybe more in the range of like 6 to 12 reps, and maybe a set to failure every now and then. But I think failure, again, unless you're a bodybuilder, probably one of the most overrated things ever. Then the Friday or the third session is that moderate. So we might juggle around things. We might do heavy lift, light lift, moderate lift, this lift. And it's like by doing that, we're approaching things in a different way. But then within that structure, things stay consistent for a very long time. So we need repeatability of intensity, but it can undulate throughout the week. And that provides, I think, quite a sound outcome. And it also helps us not overload the body too much at certain times. Like if every session's brutal, unless your body is so adapted or you're enhanced, it's just not attainable for long times. You have to take it.
When I was bulking last year, you know I don't know if you flick through like YouTube Shorts and stuff, but the Mike Mensah hit training was literally everywhere on like the algorithm and stuff, and it was really popular, and I think it still is. And it's like one set, two sets to ultimate failure. Now I followed it because I was curious and I like to try new things. I was always aware that progressive overload, whether you're doing volume, intensity, program choice, exercise selection, that's what builds muscle. Metabolic, stress, getting a pump, eccentric, all of those things are cool and fun. But at the end of the day, progressive overload, your choice of progressive overload is ultimately what builds muscle, and that is a fact. I don't think anyone can dispute that too much. Anyway, I tried the high intensity stuff, and just like you said, over time, mate, I got so burnt out and I was fried. I was mentally and physically fried, you know, and that is not sustainable. Definitely not sustainable.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm interested in that kind of thing, and I guess I kind of contradict myself because I do a lot of stuff that is maybe like a set to failure or things like that, but it's like it's understanding how to regulate volume around that concept. Like, so like for example, there is that thing of just doing one hard set to failure for like 7 or 8 exercises, and that can work as long as you're doing the right things. But it's how you're juggling that across a like a time frame, and also it's that thing of who is it that's applying this? Is this someone that's 6 months into their training? They just want to learn how to use a leg extension, or they want to learn how to squat, or they want to learn how to hinge the hip. They don't need that hit of intensity. They just, past the point, you're just sacrificing the more learning effective elements of training. And it's like that thing of this model applies better to people that are very well trained. And we fall into this trap, and I see it all the time. I have friends that are like a year or two into training, and they're looking at all this stuff, and they're like, "Oh shit! Every single set needs to be a failure for me to grow." It's like, no. Like, you're so early in the training process. Your body, this is so novel to your body. You could do 3 sets of 8 to 10, 4 sets of 8 to 10, with like 3 reps in reserve. You'll grow. Like, your body is not that resistant to shifts in homeostasis. It's not that resistant to change yet that matters. As you get more prepared and you get more, as you get more equipped to fight resistances, so like as you train more and you get stronger and more muscular, the stimulus has to inadvertently grow, and that is progressively overloading your system. So when you're really early in the stages, you don't need to be worrying about half these things. You just need to be turning up.
When you're having negative thoughts and feelings, how do you sort of cope with that? And how do you, if you're going through a bout of feeling bad per se, how do you contain that? Or how do you process that?
Well, the initial answer is that sometimes not very well. Humanity has its perks, and sometimes it's the imperfection of things. And I think I start by saying that even though I feel like I know all the things to do, I can't always do them. So sometimes when I have a bad day, it stays a bad day all day, and that's absolutely fine. And I think off the back of that, the first thing I say is like, accept that. Like, don't always have to feel the need to resist. I spent a lot of my life trying to resist how I felt. So it's something quite liberating in that acceptance of things. And I think a lot of people feel this need to like shift away from something. And I always think, is there a reason you're feeling something? Is there a reason you're having a bad day? What is it? Like, dig into the bones of what's happening. It's a painful process, and one that requires a severe amount of introspection. But is there something that's causing you to feel that way? Is my initial response. And sometimes there isn't. Like, I've had a bit of a bad time recently, and kind of didn't really understand why. And I had a couple of nights of really good sleep, and I feel great. And I realised that I've had 6 weeks of pretty much awful insomnia, and I kind of was naive to forget how much that could impact me, because when you're in it, you're completely unaware. So I think the big thing is like creating awareness, or kind of like an acceptance around what is happening. Don't victimize yourself. Don't create pity around feeling bad. Just like kind of be gentle with yourself and say like, what's going on at the moment? Like, why am I feeling like this? Is it something that's happening to me? Is it something that's happening within me? Is there something that I'm like nervous about? Is there something that has changed. Like, that's what I'd say, because again, it's like, if we are unaware of what's bad, how do we know what to change? I guess is kind of like the crux of the problem, is like, if I'm having a bad time and I want to change that, I have to surely identify what it is, rather than just like fill myself with things like pleasure and positivity and like trying to crawl out of a hole when there's a ladder there. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's, I guess, the attitude that I have now. And it took me a long time to feel like that. And I guess as well, I'm also not afraid to be like that anymore. Whereas once upon a time, I was very much like, I guess, in fear of like getting to those places, awareness of where you are. And it's like, sometimes it's doing the same thing when you're in a good place. Like, why am I in a good place? What is it about this moment that's good? It's a great skill to possess, because I think once you practice it enough, you can kind of do it on the fly. I can kind of generally figure out what's happening. And yeah, sometimes there's no solutions to these problems, but there's awareness. That's the main thing. As much as I don't want to admit it, I think habit forming is incredibly powerful. It gives you kind of continuity. So when we have regularity through time, we can spot intervals and bouts and things that don't fall within that continuity. So if I wake up at 7 a.m. every day, and all of a sudden I start waking up at 9 or at 5, that's a spike in continuity. It's a shift. And that can help to identify triggers and changes. Also, I think just some consistency helps people find like a bit of balance, a bit of equilibrium within themselves. But also another one is just like doing things. I know it's like not as easy for everyone, but like in my own life, I've managed to create a life where I don't have to avoid things that fill me with a great deal of happiness, which is pretty much every single day I spend at least 2 hours in a cafe. And that might be working. That's most likely reading. That's most likely just having 1 or 2 coffees and taking some time to just like be present. Sometimes I meet friends, sometimes I meet family. But that's a little moment in my time each day that I've managed to cultivate to help keep me in a good place, I guess. I think some people like punish themselves for being unhappy. It's like they suffer and then they punish themselves, which is absurd as a concept, isn't it, really? But
you're just putting fuel on the fire and you're actually creating it yourself. I think the way you're describing your solutions or mechanisms of dealing with it, it's from a very present and grounded sense of, this is how I feel, and that's all right. That's it. And it's really funny. It's literally what we've been talking about pretty much this whole time. It's like, you're not perfect and it's all right. Just chill out. That's something that I was doing recently as well. Like, if I'm having a moment of anxiety, like I've got elevated heart rate, I'm worrying about X, Y, Z, things that don't even exist, stuff like that. I'll just take a second now and I'll make myself do some deep breaths. I'll make myself present, like you're saying, in different formats. And then once you ground yourself, it's like, okay, it's cool. You don't have to respond in such a way that is adding fuel to your fire and putting yourself deeper into the whole of whatever negative emotions you're perceiving. You can be okay with not being okay. You just need to practice being present and being grounded. And I think the only way to solve problems in your head is when you're not anxious in the future, or even so like depressed thinking about the past. You have to be in a vibration of equanimity, I suppose, and just being really in it. That's the only way you can process it, in my opinion, which is pretty much what you're saying, like going to a coffee shop, sitting there and just sitting and just being. You're doing something you like, and if you're not having a good day, or if you are having a good day, it's all right. You don't need to let it dictate your actions of the day, which I think is quite powerful.
Yeah, brilliantly said. And I think, again, I mean, I'm like a bit of like a knowledge, I guess, like a knowledge nerd. Like, it sounds ridiculous to say, but like, I love learning, and that can come in many forms. And I think one of the biggest things I've loved learning about is myself. And I think that comes as a consequence of spending so much time resisting reality and my own feelings. But it's like, it is truly learning, like, what works for you. And I think for so long I was one of those people that was on my own back about things, and it's unbelievable that you kick yourself while you're down, whereas very rarely do other people actually kick you while you're down if you tell them the truth and, pardon me, let people help you. But no, I think you're spot on, mate. To be honest with you, I think it's it is funny how you say that. I guess my attitude has been consistent throughout all elements of my life in terms of how I coach people, how I treat myself, and how I try and understand others. And it's just being honest. Like you said, it's not perfect all the time. You come to this realization that like each day is actually such an insignificant moment, but it's the fusion of so many insignificant moments that makes a significant thing. That's not to say significant things can't happen within insignificant moments, but I guess a day is almost a grain of sand in a sand timer, isn't it? It's like, it's such an infinite, it's a speck. So to let one thing dictate how everything feels is absurd to me. And yes. I think I've kind of got on and off the rodeo so many times. I've been through this so many times that when I do have a bad day, that's okay. I've had bad days before. Get back in the saddle, just stand back up. And if it ends up being a bad week, that's okay. You've had bad weeks before. If you've had a bad month, I haven't had bad months, but like all the time, but I've had some like, I know that I've got through a day and a week, so I can get through a month. And it's like, it's such a small amount of time in the grand, scale of your life. Like don't stress over it, I guess, which is impossible to feel in that moment. And I've very much fallen victim to that. But I don't know, I just think just be kinder to yourself. Be like, show yourself a bit of compassion. Like, treat yourself like you're someone else, because a lot of the time you aren't yourself anyway. When you're in a bad place, you aren't yourself. You're a version of yourself that is struggling. You wouldn't ever put someone else down for going through something. So why do you put yourself down?
You don't have to identify with the thoughts or feelings that you have, because at the end of the day, they're not you. They're just formulations of your brain and your body and your hormones and your circumstances. They're not actually you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that brings it really with full circle with what you said. But for some proactive tips for people, being present. If I'm feeling bad and I can't shake something just by thinking, I'll get a pen and I'll literally write on the page, I'm feeling bad about X. Can I make it better? If the answer is yes, I'll write down how I can make it better, and then the solution is there. If I can't change it, then I say, this is out of your control, so stop.
Yeah.
Or another thing is like meditation. Recently, I've been doing, every morning I wake up, I'll do 5 minutes of a meditation, deep breathing, and that brings me present. It doesn't even have to be a perfect meditation or whatever. If I just do it and I do some deep breathing, it changes my sort of physiological being completely. My thoughts and feelings change purely because I've lowered cortisol by taking more energetic, oxygen-rich breaths, for example.
Yeah. If you're talking about like real ways to help people, I would say if it's ever that bad, I would always say seek therapy, speak to someone that is a professional. Like the same way that if you want to lose weight, seek a coach that can help you achieve that goal. And it's been the single most effective change I've made. And I pretty much would refuse to not have therapy now. And I think sometimes therapy is an odd word because there's this assumption that you're fixing something, whereas actually the most valuable therapy sessions I've had have come from a place where I've been good and I've felt great, and I've seen so much more growth in myself when I've grown from a place of like stability almost. But I don't know. I think then it is like learning to apply your own means, and it's like try everything. Try meditation. Try writing. Like I journal. I do a little bit of meditation. Writing for me is something that I'm really passionate about, but most of my writing now is either blog writing or creative writing. Like I really enjoy writing short stories and things like that. But I guess they are a form of therapy in themselves, and that I'm expressing ideas and concepts. But for some people, that's the worst thing in the world. So find something else. Paint. Talk to your friends. Get a dog. Do you know what I mean? Like there are different things you can do to achieve outcomes for you. And it's like, you have to be willing to test and try them and individualize yourself, like draw experience from lots of places, but don't rely on the experiences of others. Like you are completely within your rights to do whatever works for you. And that's the answer that a lot of people don't want to hear. They want to be told what to do. And So did I. I wanted to be told what to do. I followed things to a T. I literally lived my life based on the experiences of others. And
Mm.
it wasn't until I let go of that and decided to, I like stoicism. I think stoicism is great. And in desperation, I literally embodied the entire moral virtue platform of stoicism. And that was great until I kind of, I don't want to say outgrew, but I guess moved away from some of those things. And I still think stoic virtues are paramount to healthy kind of like conscious life, but I realized that I'm far too emotional to be a stoic, and that's okay. And there's some people that deeply connect with the stoic virtues and could live that life easily, and that's the right thing for them. It's brilliant, but they
Yeah,
have to be the one. They have to be the one to find it. They have to be the curator of their own path. Um,
lovely. Yeah.
how are you feeling at the moment? You feeling good?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I went since I moved there. I think I mentioned it before, but I felt like I faced all of the shadowest, deepest parts of myself that maybe I put off my entire life. So it was quite a challenge, but I'm finally feeling a lot more grounded now. But without going through a bout of anxiety or insecurity, it made me face up to what I needed to face up to, which was necessary for my growth. So
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. In fact, I'd actually encourage people that might be feeling like that to actually welcome it, sit in it, like we said, be present with it, and try to figure it out. Try to be logical and figure out why you feel a certain way. And you might just learn something, and that's more time. Yeah, that's the solution. And you might be feeling bad for no reason, and that's all right as well. But at least you
So,
understand, and at least you know. What
yeah,
about you? How are you, though?
yeah. I mean, like I said, I've had a pretty naff few weeks on and off, but I think also there's so many reasons for that. Like I've had such an incredible summer. This is my first year of working full time and being freelance at a university doing research, and then also having my own business has meant that I can afford to take as much time as I'd like at the cost of not having the money, which for me is a very simple decision to make. I would always choose the time, but I think I've had so many great experiences and stuff that now it's come to the end of that. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit of a crash, but no, I'd say for the most part, I do feel really good. And um, I feel very grateful that I can go through these periods of my life experiencing negative things and still be okay. And, I've got so many things in place now. And I'd say as well, I've got so many people in place, which is the huge one for me, is like, I can openly talk to my friends now. I can openly talk to like my family. I've got therapists, and those things like just really do help me take back control of my own experiences by sharing. And I'm actually in the process of trying to create like a small kind of social media platform around mental health.
Awesome, awesome.
Because this is something I've realized I feel so deeply passionate about. And I guess same as you, like when you go through those experiences, I feel like I've become more emotionally connected to people than I ever have. And I'm so heartbroken by people not knowing where to go and what to do.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like if I could maybe create something very simple, very basic, just like a community thing. No, there's no profit from this. It's just a page to like open up and let people open up, and everyone is invited to share their experiences. And it's just something that people can actively or passively be a part of. And I guess actively in the sense that they can contribute, they can open up, or passively in the sense that there's something somewhere someone could go to hear the experiences of others, to kind of feel that little bit of love, and to maybe feel that little bit inspired to do something on their own. And it doesn't have to be, I don't think mental health has to be this big thing of like, or, like, you don't want to fall into the trap of being like a show. And I think sometimes I'm very conscious of like knowing how to talk about it in a way that's not, I guess, like preachy or, overbearing and like, all right, we get it kind of attitude. But in a way that's like, I think it needs to be talked about still. And I'm seeing too many things, especially around like male suicide and stuff like that, that shows that there still is something not right. And
Oh, for sure, yeah.
I feel like if my small impact can carry over to a few people, then it was
Worth
worth
it.
the effort that I put into it. And because that I could have been one of those people, I could have easily been one of those people. And if it wasn't for people that I looked up to talking, I would never have opened up the way I did and changed my life from it. And I'm not as admirable as a lot of those people, but I don't know if there's someone that just stumbles and sees that and feels that shift, and someone that listens to this potentially that feels that shift to like say something. And those are small impacts, but they're meaningful. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, as I get older, the
beautiful, mate. Yeah,
more it feels like a an obligation than like a anything.
wanting.
Yeah, yeah.
Mate, I think that's great. I think that's a beautiful thing that you do as well. So yeah, let me know when you do make it, mate. I'd love to get involved and
Well, yeah. So the concept of it is whether or not, I mean, who knows? I might bottle it, but it's trying to create like a page, like just a social media page, and then from that, and I actually wanted to talk about on here as well, just like make it speak into existence. But like from that, it's like I like the idea of, because I've done some videos where I walk and I just do a little talking video.
yeah, yeah.
But I'd like to have different people on doing their versions of that. So like, my sister, like I'm proud of her, but she should be proud of herself, has opened up about having quite bad body dysmorphia.
Uh-huh.
Not of me. And it's like, well, talk about it, because there'll be other people that are struggling with that might connect. And I
Of
have a
course.
friend who struggles quite badly with bipolar disorder. So why not come on and do a little talk about that? And you've moved country and you've had to discover yourself through isolation. Talk about that. Like, it doesn't have to be like, I'm Blake Rivers, this is what I've created. It's like, no, no, no. Like, this is just the space for individuals to express so that other individuals can connect. And,
Mm.
I love hiking, and I often get pestered by people to go on hikes and do stuff because we live in such a flat place. So I thought, why not create like a little hiking community that every couple of months we just go to Wales and we do a hike. And if you want to talk about your health, you can. If you don't, you don't. You just come and hike. Like, but
Yeah,
it's a platform that connects. And I don't know. I just think there's not really much around here that does that for our generation, for our age group. Because there's some brilliant things, like my granddad's part of the walk and talk for St. It's Men. I don't know if you've seen that.
I saw
Uh,
that, yeah.
and
More
that's
like
changed his life. And it's,
also,
yeah, but he's part of that, and it was like the best thing he ever did. And
oh,
it like gave him purpose. And I feel like
oh,
people our age may be more resistant to that, but at the same time, it's more necessary than ever. We're so connected yet so detached, and it's like, I don't know, it could be something beautiful for even just one person.
for
So
sure, mate. I think that's a very noble pursuit, and I think it would bring you much fulfillment, not just for you, but for loads of people. So hats off to you, mate. You've already made a good impact. I'm sure you have. Give yourself a pat on the back, mate. Honestly, for
yeah, but
doing
likewise, man,
that.
it's brave to talk, isn't it? It's brave to accept and feel that inclination to want to help. And there's a reason we do the jobs we do, and that's because we enjoy other people and we enjoy helping other people. And I resist that, I guess.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful.